Hey guys, welcome back to Passive Money. My name's Alex. That's Kirby over there. Today we're going to be talking about creative financing. Now, I don't have much knowledge on this. I think it has to do with basically a creative way to close on a property with the owner. I don't know too much on it, but Kirby, could you explain a little bit more in detail what it is exactly?
Creative financing, it is the alternative to the normal traditional financing that we're used to. What we're used to is going to a qualified lender, you know, one of the traditional banks, Bank of America, JP Morgan. There's some finance companies out there like Rocky Mortgage and things or what have you. Um, it's just alternative from doing it that way, especially with interest rates for mortgages rising. Some places in the QM, that's qualified mortgage space, that's the traditional lender way. You see in mortgage rates, first time home buyers up in the high sixes, sevens. You might can get lucky and find somebody that can you buy down points and you can get it down to the low sixes. But for investors and things like that, interest rates could be, seven, 7.5. If you start going to the commercial space, if you're just trying to get, longer term debt, 7 year arm debt and stuff like that, you might can get 6, 7, 5. But for the most part, trying to get fixed long term debt, you're looking at the eights, 8.5s, nines. That's in the non QM space and some of the QM space. And QM and non QM just mean qualified mortgage company and non qualified meaning Freddie and Fannie Mac, non qualified, it's just some alternatives to those that don't have to follow under that guidelines of Freddie and Fannie Mac. So with interest rates being that high, and then of course as investors, we want to get a lower interest rate because we want to pay as little money as possible on a month-to-month basis and have rent or cash flow come in higher than that so we can pocket it, paying 8% interest and 9% interest and 7.5, especially with these elevated asking prices for the homes, is not conducive to for cash flow. So if a property cash flow for 300,000 at 3%, and let's say you cash flowing, let's say $400 a month, that same $300,000 house at 6 and 7% won't cash flow at all. And we've done previous videos, and I believe we talked about it in the class last week about how a same price home at different rates costs will raise that mortgage payment up 5, 6, $700 just between the beginning of the year till now.
Is creative financing just directly with the owner?
Well, creative financing, you need to have a relationship with the seller. You need
Okay.
to have a relationship with the seller because you have to walk them through the process because there's in creative financing, it's like I said, it's a way to circumvent the high well, not circumvent it, to try to get a rate that's conducive to you as a buyer or you as an investor. So a couple ways to do creative financing. You can do what they call subject to. So let's say you get somebody who bought a house in 2021, and they have like a 3% mortgage rate, right? And they're struggling, they can't maintain the cost of that property, and they're going to lose the house, and they don't want to mess up their credit. So you could do subject to financing, meaning that the you're going to take over their loan. You're going to take over their loan, and you're just going to move the deed of the title into your name as the buyer. And then you might give them a couple dollars to, a couple $1,000s to buy the home because they don't have that much equity in the home anyway. So give them, a couple $1,000s, but also with the caveat that you will pay that mortgage. You will keep paying that mortgage. So how it's good for the seller is good for the seller because their credit won't go bad. Their mortgage will continue to be paid. They won't have the house no more, but they don't have to worry about bankruptcies, foreclosures, and all that hitting their credit score and stuff like that. And they can still go out and borrow and land once they get back on their feet and stuff like that. For me as the buyer, it works because now I have a mortgage that's not in my name first. I have low interest rate debt, usually fixed 30 years at 2, 3%. and then I can, move a tenant in there to cash flow where that same property wouldn't cash flow if I went the traditional route, buying the house, financing at 6, 7, and 8%. And that's how that worked with subject to. And that's only one way you can do creative financing.
Now, does subject to only work when the seller doesn't have enough equity in the home to, say, sell the house and just pay off their mortgage?
Mainly that's what they will use it for. If they don't have enough equity,
Okay,
if the housing market becomes soft and they can't sell it for the price that they want to sell it for.
got
So let's say in 2020, 2021, they wanted to buy
okay,
the house. They bought the house for 300,000, and now that same house may be worth 290, 295 or something like that, but they don't have any equity in the house. And then if they sell the house, once you add in closing costs, once you add in the realtor fees, they don't have enough money to pay off the house. You see what I'm
right,
saying?
right, yeah, that makes
So that works best for situations like that, and then you probably gonna see more of those kind of deals. Well, you really won't see them because they're not published a lot. But those kind of deals will be conducive, especially if we get that the recession talk that we've been getting, and then we go deep in a recession, and then people lose a large amount of jobs and they can't afford that mortgage. And then of course a lot of sellers don't know about this way of financing, of course, and you'll see a lot of people getting, doing short sales and doing foreclosures and things like that because they don't have knowledge on it, and it's not something that they parade around. And again, that's why when you're doing creative financing, you need to have build a relationship with the seller or build a relationship with the seller's agent and explain this stuff to them and show and tell them how it works, because most real estate agents don't know how creative financing work either. So it's about building that relationship and explaining it to them and making sure everybody's on a good page and trying to understand that you're trying to help the seller out, you're trying to still help the real estate agent get their commissions, and you're also trying to help yourself out. This is really not a I'm trying to get over on somebody. It's hey, I mean, well, it's going to work great for you as an investor because it's going to work good for you because you would have to pay 7, 8% on the mortgage, and then now you're getting it for 3, so that helps you there and it helps you cash flow. It helps the seller because it helps them not get a foreclosure, not have to file bankruptcy and things like that. And then they credit still good and their mortgage continue to get paid to actually help them build their credit if their credit is not A1 and stuff like that, because you're going to keep paying that mortgage off. Um, and then again, the realtor, you'll bring enough cash to the table as a buyer to, pay the commissions for the seller agent and what have you.
okay. Got you. All right. Now, are there any common ways of creative financing? Like owner financing, is that creative financing as well?
Yeah, owner financing is creative financing. Owner financing is just instead of going to a bank, the seller becomes the bank.
Right.
Uh, and then you'll see every time you hear that, every time sellers hear that, oh, will you do owner financing? A lot of times you're going to hear no, because the only thing they're thinking about is getting scammed, getting screwed over, because they're just thinking of what the bad parts can happen. Now, other parts of that is the seller just want a lump sum of money. They want a lump sum of money, and because they've got other plans and stuff to do like that. Seller financing is good for um, people that have equity. They have equity in their homes. You want that because if they don't have any equity in home and you're doing seller finance, you might as well do a subject to. You see what I'm saying? You're
Right.
paying them if you doing if they don't have equity in their home and you're doing seller financing, you're paying them and you're hoping they pay their mortgage company. You don't want that. You want to make sure the mortgage is getting paid because you don't want nothing to, come through and mess up that. But with seller financing, you want somebody that has a lot of equity or the house paid off. The house paid off and then it works that way. So let's say a seller has 70% equity, right? 70% equity in the home. You come up with the buying price, and then your down payment will be that 30% to finish paying off the mortgage, and then you will seller finance. So let's say they got 80% equity and they still, so you come with 30% to the table, the 20% to pay off the mortgage, put the other 10% in their pocket, and then you would finance over set terms that you make. It could be 5 year fixed, amortized over 30 years. It could be 10 years, 15 years, and or 30-year fixed at an interest rate that's way lower than the standard market rate. And then that will help you buy a property that's cash flowing because the interest rate is so low. But again, a lot of sellers don't like that because they think of the worst conditions that can happen. But seller financing, and that just avenue of seller financing, where the seller is just absolutely 100% the bank, it works best for somebody who has a lot of equity in their home. It works for like landlords that's just, they've became long in the tooth in the game, where they've been doing this, 30, 40, 50 years, and they're just tired of, you know, they're just tired of doing the real estate game, tenants calling and dealing with the headaches and stuff like that. They still want the cash flow every month, but they don't want to deal with the headache of, being a landlord. And then that works perfectly for them because they they get to sell their property. They don't have the obligation no more of the property or the tenant, and they still get monthly checks with, cash flow. And now it's no issues on their end. And again, most of the investors that's been in the game a long time, they know it's all about cash flow. It's not about, having that one lump sum of money. So people like that, or people that's trying to do estate planning. What I mean by that is, let's say somebody has 100 buildings, and, they're getting up there in age, and then they have kids or don't have kids, and the kids don't want to take over. Or they know that their kids are going to do a terrible job at running the business or running the property management. So instead of leaving it to their kids and having the kids run it into the ground, again, they know it's all about cash flow, and they just want to leave the cash flow to their kids. So they might sell a portfolio or sell different properties and just put it on a 30-year fixed term, and then you just paying back the estate every month, and then it's going to the kids instead of the kids just messing over all the properties and things like that. So those are the people that is best for people with a lot of equity, and people that don't need an infusion of cash or something like that, and they still want the monthly checks coming in. I don't want to say old people. I hate saying that, but it's people. Don't usually people. The people that have equity is the people that's been, in a property or having a unit for a long time.
Right, right.
So I mean, even if you went with single family homes and stuff like that, it's people that's been in the property for a long time. That's how you could take advantage of seller financing. You just can't go to anybody, any willy-nilly person, because most people don't have that much equity or close to paying it off to say, hey, you want to do seller financing? You want to do seller financing? So that's a way to do it.
Are there ways the seller can avoid getting screwed by the buyer if there is a seller financing deal?
Oh, it's the thing. Only thing that's different between the the only thing different between a traditional lender and a seller finance is still the same contract. It's a contract paperwork. The seller can still foreclose on the buyer and everything. All that stuff is still in play. It's not just a handshake deal around the corner. You still go to the title company, you still go to the title company, and the title company do the title search, yada yada. Only thing, instead of it saying Bank of America as the lender, it is the seller as the lender. So all that stuff still goes on, you know, but it's more loose or fluid. Like, let's say you have a property you want to sell, and we agree to do seller financing. Like with um, let's say Rocket Mortgage or something, you gotta do ACH payments or something like that. You can just be like, hey, send it to me to PayPal, send it to me to Zillow. And then, but both of you are keeping track and record of every time you paid it. Like if you're using Venmo, Zelle, or whatever, it tracks every time you send payments to that person. And then, of course, you got something in the memo block like that. And that's how you do it. I mean, you come up with your amortization schedule, but as a buyer, I'm trying to get the lowest interest rate possible, 2% or something like that. Or, but that's how it's done. So it's not. But the thing is, they're not thinking of a lot of sellers not thinking of that, and a lot of people, like we talked about in previous videos, they look at, oh, I need a lump sum of money, but the bills still come every week. So that's how some forms of creative financing. You got people. like Zuber over there at One Rental at a Time. He got the 50-40-10 strategy. 50-40-10 strategy is same thing, seller financing, but it's not the seller taking 100% of the financing, or let's say you put 20% down or 80% of the financing. What's going to happen is the seller will get 60% of his money at closing, his or her money at closing. I'm just saying 60-40-10, but it can, I mean, 50-40-10, but it could be 60-60-10, 20 or whatever. It could the percentages, but the name of his model is the 50-40-10. But what happens in that situation? The seller actually gets 60% of his money at closing, because what's going to happen is me as the buyer, I'm going to come in with 10% down payment. The non-QM lender who's going to take the first mortgage on there, which is going to be around 8.5%, is going to finance 50% of the deal, and then the seller is only going to have to finance the other 40% of the deal. So the seller will get 60%, my down payment, and the non-QM lender, that money up front. So that's at 8%, or 8.5%. Let's just say 8.5%. And then you have to work out a deal with the seller to ask the seller to be the second lien holder on there. So it's another 40% that they have, that I'm seller financing with them. And then, come up with terms, 20 year, 30 years, fixed, or 15 years with a balloon payment or whatever. But you need that interest rate around 1%, 1%, 2%. So combined, that's like 9. To divide that in half, it's around 4.5, 5.5%, which is still better than today's interest rates to, have a cash flow property. But in those instances, like seller finance or the 50-40-10 strategy, it's not like traditional where you come in and lowball the offer, because the seller is doing you a favor to get you a lower rate. So you're trying to give the seller his terms, i.e., if they're trying to sell a house for 300,000, you're trying to give them that whole 300,000, because they're helping you on the backside with the financing and making your cash flow work. So you giving them the 300,000, 60% at closing with your 10% down, and the non-QM financing at 50%, and then he or she, the seller, is carrying the note. And that's another way to do it, to get that, instead of paying 8%, 7% mortgage rates. If you do a blended rate between the non-QM and the seller financing, that comes out to about, like I said, 4.5 or 5.5% interest.
Okay. Well, guys, if you like this video, hit the like button. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. If I missed anything I should have asked, let us know down below. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you guys in the next video.